हाय, इस वीडियो में हम कवर करेंगे स्टेजेस इन द पॉलिसी प्रोसेस. सो व्हाट आर द स्टेजेस दैट आर मेनली यूज फॉर पॉलिसी प्रोसेस. ओके, सो फर्स्ट वन इज द पॉलिसी formulation, second one is the policy implementation, and third one is the policy evaluation. Okay, so these three stages that we discussed in the last video in the introduction. Okay, now according to the Thomas Day, there are some stages. Okay, so that we will study in this video. First one is the problem identification. So the identification of the policy problem through demand, okay, for the government action. Then second one is the agenda setting. After identification of the problem, then second stage, that is agenda setting. So for agenda setting, it is very important that focusing the attention of the mass media and public officials on the specific public problem as prelude to decision making. तो जैसे प्रॉब्लम आइडेंटिफाई हो जाता है, तो उसके बाद उस प्रॉब्लम के ऊपर जो मास मीडिया है और जो पब्लिक ऑफिसर्स है, उनका अटेंशन, ओके, उनका जो फोकस है वो मेनली उस प्रॉब्लम के तरफ होना चाहिए. उससे क्या हो जाएगा, डिसीजन मेकिंग प्रोसेस एक अच्छी हो जाएगी. ओके, एक सही डिसीजन ओके हो पाएगी. देन आफ्टर एजेंडा सेटिंग, द पॉलिसी फॉर्मुलेशन. सो द डेवलपमेंट ऑफ पॉलिसी प्रपोजल बाय इंटरेस्ट ग्रुप or officers of the chief executive office, committees of the legislature, think tank, etc. Okay, they all are, okay, mainly play very important role in the development of the policy. So policy formulation, then the policy legitimation, very important, the selection and enactment of policy through political action by the executive, okay, legislature, and by the court. So after legitimation, the very important stage, that is the implementation. Okay, so the implementation of the policy through organized bureaucracy, public expenditure, and the activities of executive agenda. When policy implemented, okay, at the last that policy will be evaluated. Okay, so policy evaluation is the last stage. Evaluation of the policy by the government agency themselves, outside consultant, the press, and the public. So these all are the main, okay, main stages that is given by the Thomas Day, okay, on the policy process. First identify the problem, then set the agenda, after that make the policy, and then policy legitimation, then policy implementation, at last policy evaluation. Okay, now who who good and guns, okay, policy analysis for the real world have identified 9 important stages in the policy process. So the deciding to decide, that is agenda setting, deciding deciding to decide, that is agenda setting, then deciding how to decide, okay, that is issue filtration, then issue definition, then forecasting, setting objective, that is priorities. Okay, then option analysis, policy implementation, monitoring and control, evaluation and review, and policy maintenance, succession and termination. So these all are the main 9, okay, important stages that is mainly given by the Hoogood and Guns. Then the policy cycle of May and Wild Wax Sky, okay, Wild Sky include agenda setting, issue analysis, implementation, evaluation, termination. Similarly, James Anderson has also dealt with description of the policy process. His model of the policy process has 5 stages. What are they? First, problem identification and agenda formulation, and second, formulation. Then third one is the adoption, then implementation, evaluation. Okay, so these are some of the, okay, some of the stages that is mainly given by the मे एंड विल्ड स्काई. ओके, तो सबसे पहले क्या करना है, प्रॉब्लम को आइडेंटिफाई करना है. ओके, एंड एजेंडा बनाना है कि किस तरह से प्रॉब्लम पॉलिसी बनाई जा सकती है. देन पॉलिसी फॉर्मुलेट करना है, बनाना है, फिर उसको एडॉप्ट करना है, ओके, थ्रू द लीगल मीन्स. देन उसको इम्प्लीमेंट करना है, एग्जीक्यूट करना है. आफ्टर एग्जीक्यूशन, ओके, उसको इवेल्युएशन करना है आफ्टर गेटिंग द फीडबैक. सो लाइक वाइज द पॉलिसी साइकिल ऑफ द मे एंड विड्स, ओके, विड स्काई has given. Then there are a basic linkage in the policy framework for the systematic analysis of information, and it is used in the policy related context. So the basic to the framework is information for policy analysis, which is derived from the system or the program परफॉर्म इन टर्म्स ऑफ इंटरैक्टिंग अमोंग. तो किन किन के इंटरैक्शन से हमें मेनली इनपुट मिलेगा, एंड दैट इनपुट एज अ फीडबैक वी विल make or we will evaluate the policy. The input which indicate need and demand, then process concerning the provisions of service for a long term care, then output in terms of the use of service and cost of care, outcome which is identify the end result certain course of action. So जो हमें इनपुट मिलेगा सबसे पहले, दैट इज ओके बाय द नीड एंड डिमांड. ओके, वॉट एवर द नीड एंड डिमांड ऑफ द इंडिविजुअल एंड द ग्रुप ऑफ पीपल, that will determine the input. Okay, that is mainly the input. Okay, before policy get formulated we must have the input. Okay, so input in the form of need and demand of the individual or the group of people, okay, they put in front of the political system. Then after getting input, that input will be processes, okay, mainly concerning with the provision of service for a long term of care. Then after processing, after creation of the policy, formulation of the policy, that is through the output, that policy will convert into output in terms of the use of services or a cost of care. So at last when policy get implemented, the outcome, okay, which identify the end result, क्या वो पॉलिसी ने अपना ऑब्जेक्टिव जो था उस पॉलिसी बनाने का जो ऑब्जेक्टिव था, ओके, दैट ऑब्जेक्टिव, ओके, फ्रॉम द इनपुट वेदर दैट ऑब्जेक्टिव इज फुलफिल और नॉट, ओके, that is through the evaluation we will come to know. So these are the main stages of the policy process. So for example, in the context of national health policy, now here we will see the examples. Okay, so the input in terms of the need and demand comprising health illness and the quality of life, okay, expressed in physical, psychological, social and environmental terms. Okay, now need are the condition that call for the action. Okay, so they are among the most important predictors of utilization and are mostly described in terms of dialogue, functional limitation, perceived illness, symptoms, poor health status. On the other hand, demand are expressed as desire in relation to the service sought, okay, whether they are need or not. Other input include resources such as manpower, doctor, nurse, paramedical staff, hospital, okay, primary health center, medical equipment, facility, medicine. These all are mainly the input. Okay, from this input we will make the policy, and that policy convert the whatever the input, okay, they put, that will convert into the output. So on the process linkage, it is concerned with the delivery of service to meet the need and demand of clients and professionals. So service are described in such terms as their type, delivery, management and control of the cost and quality. Other service include support such as legal aid, income support, consumer educations and professional development. This is mainly the input. Now the output of the service related to the program that are described in terms of their use of those services, okay, the cost and quality of care. Finally the outcome are the response to the service expressed in terms of the level of the well-being, that is health and client and professional satisfaction, that are the attained as the result. Okay, the foregoing analytical framework facilitate programs evaluation which are expected to lead the rational policy and decision about the health service. In the next section we will discuss the various stages in the policy process. Okay, now this is the example of medical. Okay, medical, how the input we will get through all these things. Okay, then we will convert it into output, and after the output this will result. So this is the example, and these are the stages of the policy. Okay, policy process. Now here are some of the specific stages. Okay, that is describes various stages in the policy process. Okay, so these are the mainly again stages where the policy, okay, the policy will use these all stages while formulating the policy. Okay, all the policy process, okay, use these type of stages. The first one is the identifying underlying problem. Okay, for the analytical purpose, the first step is to identify the whether and why there is a problem at all. Defining the problem involve a moving from, okay, modern descriptions to a more abstract conceptual plan. Here an attempt is be made to diagnose the form of the market failure that is confronted. For example, the environmentalist who is investigating alternative pollution control measure for the Ganges will find that the water is being polluted by the dumping of the industrial waste and untreated sewage into the river. So first they identify the problem, why this is happening. Okay, so this is one of the very important stage in the policy process. So having identified the context of the problem, the next step is to determine what objective are to be achieved in tackling the issue. Okay, too often we lose sight of the basic objective. Paying careful attention to the objective is therefore important. For example, the provisions of the service of the doctor is merely mean to the end of improving the health issue. Likewise, we have to find out the basic objective of the policy. Okay, mainly the problem. Okay, so this is the first stage, that is identifying underlying problem. Then second one, the determining policy alternative. Okay, if now we come to know what is the problem, now second stage is how or which policy we should frame. Okay, so the next step is to determine alternative course of action. Government intervention can take any form. It is important to determine which kind of intervention is most positive in the given situation. Now we will mostly, okay, find out, okay, from the alternative. Okay, we will select the best alternative. Okay, whatever the alternative we have. Okay, so as per the problem we have to select the best possible alternative, okay, through the policy. So in case of solution, in case of the pollution of the Ganges, consider the following possibilities. Saboteurs in some catchment or adjoining area of the river might be put under the obligation by government, okay, to clean water. Government would then have the right to shore a polluter. Okay, then second one, the government may require the industrialized concern and urban dwellers concern to stop dumping waste and untreated sewage into the river. Okay, this thing may happen. Okay, after come to know the reason of the problem, it may otherwise impose restriction on them on the quality of dumping. The government may permit polluter to purchase right to discharge a certain amount of pollutant. Okay, polluters may be required to pay effluent charges and to install pollution control devices. So likewise the solution can be provided. The state government or the local authority itself can directly undertake the work of cleaning and removing the pollution or the other dump. So this is also the one option, and this is also one of the option. So now we have to find out the best possible solution for the problem. So these are some of the alternatives for the pollution control. Okay, now we come to know the alternatives. As difficult are identified and additional information become available, refinement of the alternative course of the action will continue throughout the analysis. Okay, so determining alternative for the policy choice generally required expertise. Okay, for selecting the best alternative we need the expertise or the special knowledge in the relevant area. Okay, now we have the alternative, now we have to select best one. So for that also we need the expert. Then third, that is stage is the in the policy process is the forecasting and evaluating alternatives. Having identified the underlying problem and having determined the alternative for the policy choice, policy analysts evaluate the consequences of each of the alternative. Okay, so for this he will turn to a relevant model for forecasting consequences. Okay, in the case of pollution control problem, the model need would be far more complex. It is necessary here to predict all the effort of the proposed policy, just okay, not just the economic effect desired by the decision maker. Then, if the consequences of the alternative course of action are uncertain, and especially if the possible outcome differ widely from one another, the analyst may wish to develop a decision tree and evaluate, okay, very important, okay, and evaluate the probability of each outcome. Now this is very important. Okay, analyst may wish to develop a decision tree and evaluate the probability of each outcome. Okay, this is very important because we are mainly evaluating the alternatives. Okay, so very often it is difficult to have a rational policy choice unless the relative merits of the alternative option आर एनालाइज सिस्टमेटिकली. जब तक हम जो अल्टरनेटिव हम चूज़ कर रहे उसके मेरिट्स के बारे में हमें जब तक पता नहीं चलेगा, हाउ वी विल come to know the on the result. Okay, so the cost involved, regulations and administration need to be evaluated. Evaluation of the outcome is of a great importance as it is remain us to look careful at the cost benefit analysis of the particular policy choice. Okay, so after we will come to know, or after evaluation of the alternative policy, then the next stage, that is policy selection. The next step in policy analysis related to the making and preferred choice course of action. The situation may be so simple for the policy makers that he can simply look at the consequences predicted for each alternative and select one that is best one. Okay, he will first see all the alternative available. Okay, and after evaluation of each policy, okay, he can choose one, okay, which will be the best one from all these, okay, available alternatives. In contrast, it may be so complex that the policy analysis will have to set out the order of preference among the various possible outcome, that is in terms of how different set of stakeholder might respond to the possible choice and their outcome. So this is very important for the policy selection. It has been observed that countless policy studies have led nowhere. Sometime, okay, sometime the fault is attributed to the public decision makers who do not take advantage of readily accessible data. Okay, too often it is analyzed themselves who have to share a major portion of the blame when thinking go wrong. But by enhancing the capacity of the analyst to forecast the consequences of the alternative course of action and providing framework for evaluating those consequences, the technique of the policy analysis lead to better decision and policy. Okay, so now after the policy selection, we select the best policy from the analysis. Okay, whatever the evaluation we done, okay, or from the alternative policy, we selected the best one. Okay, by just seeing the merits of each policy. Okay, and where we see that, where we get the best merit, okay, that policy we selected. Now the policy implementation, after getting policy selected, that policy should be implemented. So in the final analysis, success of public administration can be measured only in a relation to the implementation of that policy. Okay, so policy implementation is a critical important to success of the government. However good the political system, okay, however noble the goal, however sound the organized system, no policy can succeed if the implementation is poor. Okay, very important. So the implementation process of the policy should be strong. It is most general form. Okay, implementation is a phase between the policy statement and operation. So it seeks to determine whether an organization is able to carry out and achieve the stated objective of its policy. The exercise involves developing and pursuing strategy of organization and management to ensure that the policy process is completed with the minimum of delay, cost overrun and problem. Most specifically, the task of implementation is to form a bridge that allow the objective of public policy to be achieved as outcome of the government activity. It involves the creation of policy delivery system in which specific mechanisms are designed and pursued in the hope of reaching particular end. Okay, so likewise, okay, we implemented the policy. Now constraint in the policy implementation. What are the restriction? What are the, okay, what are the opposition that will come while implementing the policy? Okay, see, policy can become very difficult to implement if the implementation are not given sufficient autonomy and flexibility in carrying out their tasks. Very important. Okay, for implementation we must give the officials, okay, the sufficient autonomy. Okay, sufficient autonomy का मतलब ये होता है कि उनको sufficient power देना चाहिए to take their own decision, okay, as per their intellectual power, and flexibility to carry out the task. Political pressure in a democratic contest constitute a major constraint. Okay, so political जो प्रेशर होता है और बहुत ज़्यादा मतलब पॉलिसी को क्या करता है, वाले इम्प्लीमेंटिंग बहुत ज़्यादा ओपोजिशन, ओके, फेस करना पड़ता है टू द ऑफिसर्स हु आर इम्प्लीमेंटिंग द पॉलिसी. ओके, बिकॉज ऑफ द political pressure. Okay, if that country is the democratic country. A third constraint is that the bureaucracy does not have necessary professional skill need for the implementation of the policy. Okay, so skill is also very important, but that skill, okay, will not have into the bureaucracy. Okay, so that also create a problem for the implementation of the policy. So lack of resources such as personal, financial, technical and also become the hindrance in the implementation of the public policy. Okay, so they are also the constraint of the implementation of the policy. Okay, so lack of resources very important. Okay, then another problem in policy implementation might arise due to the lack of response from the target group, okay, to whom that policy is ultimately made. If that target group, okay, not respond, then feedback will not come to the political system or the mainly to the government, and that policy will not suffer, okay, will not sustain mainly, because if the feedback will not come, then how the modification will be done. Okay, so the feedback is very important, and that feedback, okay, mainly from the target group to whom that policy is made of. So if that target group will not respond, then how the policy will be properly implemented. Sometimes people do not invoke adequate interest in the implementation of the program. So so the main problem is the, that is implementation arise due to the lack of response from the target group. Okay, so target group first their response, okay, while implementing they should be response, they should be positive toward the implementation process. Okay, they have to support the government for the implementation of the policy, that target group, okay, to whom that policy is made of. So sometimes people do not invoke adequate interest in the implementation of the program because they may not be aware of the objective or the goal of the program. Okay, so this problem may be, okay, why the target group not respond, because they are not aware about the objective, goals, okay, of that policy. So lack of people participation often upset the implementation. So participation of the people is very important for proper implementation of the policy. So these all are the main, okay, main constraint, okay, main constraint or difficulties we can say for the implementation of the policy. Okay, so at last, after implementation, policy monitoring. Okay, this is the last stage. Monitoring is very important. Okay, then that is policy outcome and policy evaluation. Okay, at last the okay, evaluation. So we will see the policy monitoring after implementation. We should first first monitor how the policy is in, okay, process. So monitoring is essential a subset of the implementation process. So after implementation, policy monitoring is very much important. It is an activity which occur in the course of implementing the policy or the program. It is the process of monitoring that implementer actually get the beginning sight the result of the policy. The objective of the policy monitoring is to ensure through the policy implementation process, okay, that resource input are used as efficiently as possible to yield intended result. The standard which are used for both efficiency of the resource utilization, okay, and effectiveness of the policy implementation are inherent in the policy making process. The monitor has to able to appraise resource, okay, use, technical activity and policy implementation result with the amount of detail which permit him to make change or correction when necessary. An effective monitoring public policy aid in cost reduction, time saving and effective resource utilization. So the key use in monitoring is to create an information system that enable policy makers and policy implementers to make timely decision and policy. Therefore, it is important that monitoring and control process should be given due important, okay, and desire properly. So designate, okay, designed, okay, properly. So the monitoring process is very important, okay, for the proper decision on the policy. One of the serious problem in monitoring relate to the poor design of the implementing system. So because of the poor design of the implementation system, the monitoring process, okay, get the problem, okay, have the problem in the monitoring. So second time the constant for the policy monitoring, so that is because of the implementation, okay, poor implementation. Too often implementation staff feel so pressed, okay, to achieve result that they make shortcut and avoid monitoring and control. Third common constraint for the policy implementation manager is shortage of corrective action which would be applied when the program is found to be deviating in some respect from the projected reform or performance. Fourth, pervasive obstacle to policy monitoring is ignore about the role and method. This is often due to the lack of requisite skill on the part of key functionaries. Okay, so this is all about the policy monitoring. Now policy outcome. The next stage, okay, is it is mainly the result, okay, first result of the implemented policy. The next stage is policy cycle is the policy outcome. They are different from the output. Policy output are the actual decision of the implementation. The concept of outcome lays stress on what actually happened to the targeted group intended to affect by the policy. Okay, we will know by the outcome. Okay, whatever the policy that we implemented, whether that policy, okay, achieve the objective, okay, or not. Oh, okay, it is intended changes on the target group do not occur, okay, sometime is wrong. State housing scheme for the poor may be used to illustrate this point, although one can find the fulfillment of target including the physical presence of house. It was observed that in a majority of the instance the beneficiary choice not to occupy them because they were not the linking in terms of size, ambitions or quality of the construction or some other deficiencies. The policy output were achieved but not the outcome. Then policy evaluation, very important. After getting output, we can evaluate the policy. So how that policy will be evaluated? The final stage of policy process is the sequential pattern of activities, is the evaluation of the policy. Very important. Evaluation is concerned with what happened once a policy has been put into effect. It is an assessment of the overall effectiveness of the program in meeting its objective, assessment of the relative effectiveness of program in meeting the expected objective. So the evaluation performs several functions in policy analysis. In the first place, it is provide reliable information about the policy performance. It measures the impact of the policy on society. It reveals the extent to which particular goal have been achieved, increase the life expectancy at birth. It also helps us to understand the degree to which policy issue have been resolved. Now, secondly, evaluation help clarify the value that underline the selection of goal and objective. And third one is the evaluation may result in the effort to restructure policy problem. It may be contribute to the emergence of new goal and potential solution. Evaluation during the implementation process of the policy might suggest its termination of the political together. In short, evaluation is primarily an effort to analyze policy outcome in terms of the set objective. It is therefore help in bringing out the utility of the policy under consideration. So this is mainly the policy monitoring process. Okay, at last we will evaluate the policy. Okay, after monitoring, after getting the feedback, okay, we will evaluate the policy. So evaluation a public program involve the listing of the goal and program, measuring the degree to which this goal have been achieved. Okay, how much that goal is achieved. Okay, so objective of the policy is achieved or not, that is mainly come to know while evaluation. Okay, or after evaluation we will come to know whether the objective of the policy is is achieved or not. And finally, suggesting changes that might bring the performance of the organization more in line with the intended purpose of the program. So evaluation has a sensitive side of it. It may sometimes become a point of conflict or the reinforce pre-existing conflict. Negative evaluation of the performance of the public program may result in the termination. So the content of the evaluation, the goal that can contain in it, the even the organization performance performing the function, all of them will affect the final assessment. Therefore, there is a need for careful design of evaluation work by competence person. This require adequate information, feedback, resource and political will. So this is mainly related to the evaluation of the policy. So these all are the main stages of the policy process. Okay, so we'll start from the policy, of problem identification. See, first we actually what we are learning the stages of the policy process. हम policy process के stages पढ़ रहे इसमें, जिसमें सबसे पहले हमने क्या किया, वी अंडरस्टैंड द प्रॉब्लम. ओके, फर्स्ट वी अंडरस्टैंड द प्रॉब्लम, में प्रॉब्लम को समझा हमने. ठीक है, उसके बाद क्या किया, उस कौन सी पॉलिसी होनी चाहिए, ये प्रॉब्लम है, अभी इसके लिए कौन सी पॉलिसी होनी चाहिए. ठीक है, अभी हमारे पास बहुत सारे ऑप्शंस है. ठीक है, हम ये भी कर सकते इस प्रॉब्लम को सॉल्व करने के लिए, इसके लिए ये भी कर सकते. ओके, देर आर मल्टीपल वेज, सो देर आर मल्टीपल पॉलिसीज, सो वी डिटरमाइन द बेस्ट अल्टरनेटिव. ओके, आफ्टर सीइंग द प्रॉब्लम, देन द थर्ड वन इज द इवेल्युएट. ओके, हमने प्रॉब्लम हमने क्या किया, सबसे पहले प्रॉब्लम को समझा, देन हम अल्टरनेटिव को जाना, देन हमने क्या किया, जो जो अल्टरनेटिव थे हमारे पास, we evaluate all the alternative. Okay, according to the merit of each alternative we find out the best one. Okay, we find out the best one, that is the policy selection. So evaluate करने के बाद हम सभी पॉलिसी को, जो भी अल्टरनेटिव थे उनको इवेल्युएट करने के बाद हमने फोर्थ स्टेज में क्या किया, एक पर्टिकुलर पॉलिसी को सिलेक्ट किया, ओके, अकॉर्डिंग टू द मेरिट, ओके, देन दी सिलेक्ट किया पॉलिसी को, देन हमने क्या किया, उस पॉलिसी को इम्प्लीमेंट किया, एग्जीक्यूट किया, ओके, पॉलिसी को एग्जीक्यूट किया हमने। सो वाइल एग्जीक्यूटिंग हमें ये सभी प्रॉब्लम दिक्कतें हुई, और ये दिक्कतें होती है नॉर्मली, ओके। अगर डेमोक्रेटिक कंट्री है तो उसमें पॉलिटिकल प्रेशर उसको दिक्कत करता है, कोई भी रिसोर्स की कमी हो सकती है, स्किल की कमी हो सकती है, ओके, बहुत सारी चीज़ें की कमी हो सकती है, ओके, और ये चीज़ें मेनली क्या करती है, दिक्कतें पैदा करती है इन द पॉलिसी इम्प्लीमेंटेशन। देन हमने पॉलिसी इम्प्लीमेंट कर दिया, अभी वो पॉलिसी हम मॉनिटर कर रहे हैं कि वेदर दैट पॉलिसी इज रियली अचीविंग ऑब्जेक्टिव और नॉट, ओके, द पॉलिसी ऑब्जेक्टिव और नॉट। तो हम क्या कर रहे हैं, मॉनिटर कर रहे हैं उसको, पॉलिसी को, ओके, इन द 6 स्टेज। देन हमें पॉलिसी का मॉनिटरिंग हो गई, मतलब पॉलिसी इम्प्लीमेंट के बाद हम मॉनिटर किया, फिर पॉलिसी का जो काम था वो हो गया, अभी अभी हमें आउटपुट मिलेगा पॉलिसी का। तो पॉलिसी का हमें आउटपुट इसमें देखने को मिलेगा। अगर इसमें कोई दिक्कत होती है, फिर आउटकम जैसे मिलेगा, हम पॉलिसी के आउटपुट को क्या करेंगे, इवैल्यूएशन करेंगे, ठीक है। जो भी आउटपुट मिला हमें, अभी हम पॉलिसी के जो भी आउटपुट मिला उसको इवैल्यूएट करेंगे, वेदर द ऑब्जेक्टिव ऑफ द पॉलिसी इज फुलफिल्ड और नॉट। जिस लिए हमने पॉलिसी बनाया था किसी प्रॉब्लम को सॉल्व करने के लिए, क्या वो प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व हुआ है कि नहीं हुआ, तो क्यों, मतलब नहीं हुआ तो क्यों नहीं हुआ, क्या क्या दिक्कतें आई, ओके, क्या क्या कमी आई, ये सभी चीज़ें हम वाइल इवैल्यूएशन वो सब चीज़ें देखेंगे, ओके, पॉलिसी इवैल्यूएशन में। फिर हम क्या करेंगे, डिज़ाइन करेंगे पॉलिसी, डिज़ाइन ऑफ इवैल्यूएशन, मतलब ये कि जैसे मान लीजिए कि हमें ये दिक्कतें मिली, अभी अभी उसको हम क्या करेंगे, दोबारा उसको विथ उसको इवैल्यूएट करेंगे, ओके, मतलब दोबारा हम उसको फिर दोबारा री इम्प्लीमेंट करेंगे थ्रू द प्रॉपर इवैल्यूएशन, ठीक है। जो जो कमी है उसको भरते हुए हम उसको फिर और दोबारा ये करेंगे, ओके। इस तरीके से पॉलिसी को एकदम बढ़िया तरीके से अलग अलग स्टेजेस में हम मॉनिटर करते हुए पॉलिसी प्रोसेस को सक्सेसफुल बनाएंगे। सो दिस ऑल आर मेनली द स्टेजेस ऑफ द पॉलिसी प्रोसेस, ओके, एंड दिस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एज पर द एग्जाम पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू। एग्जाम में ये क्वेश्चन, ओके, अक्सर पूछा जाता है, ओके। सो दिस इज वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एज पर द एग्जाम पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू। राइट डाउन द स्टेजेस इन द policy process, okay, straightforward question may be asked in the examination. So that's all for this video. Thank you, bye.